Welcome to the KEPSA Exchange, a podcast where business meets bold. Bold ideas, bold facts, bold truths, even to power. Our guests, they bring leadership, innovations, disruptions, regulations, and even drivers of our Kenyan economy. If you're about growth, grit, and game changing business moves, then this is the podcast to be at. Ladies and gentlemen, buckle up because this is the voice of the private sector. And today we have none other than Joyce Gachugi, the Iron Lady in the in the sustainability sector, and we'll get to know much more about you, the CEO of the Packaging Producer Responsibility Organization, one of the longest names, but in short, PAKPRO. Joyce, karibu sana. Please,
Asante sana,
nimekuintroduce, but I know I haven't done justice. So if you may elaborate about who you are.
So I'm Joyce Gachugi Waweru, Mrs. I
Muhimu
am
sana
muhimu,
clarify.
very important. Married to one. I am a mother. I'm also the chief executive officer at the Packaging Producer Responsibility Organization, PAKPRO. We are one of Kenya's PROs that is driving circular economy in this country. Our mandate is to represent the interests of industry to ensure that their post-consumer packaging is treated to avoid it getting into our natural environment, but to be able to create value out of that packaging material.
I think this excites me because it is where we bring the nexus between business and sustainability. And I know this conversation is exciting for a lot of people, but sometimes we do not get into the nitty gritties of what this means on the ground. And I hope this conversation today will help us to bring that, perspective to a lot of for a lot of people who are either trying to get into business and how to embrace, embed sustainability right from the beginning, or those who are already in business and they're wondering how to go about it, or those who really didn't even know that they can actually bring sustainability on board as part of their business strategy. Yeah. So we'll dive into all those, and you have mentioned about a PRO. We'll also get to understand what that is and what is EPR, how is that working out for Kenya. With the only country in Africa in the region who are spearheading an EPR, we will get into that. But first, I have told you before, you and I have known each other for a minute now, but mimi sijui wewe ni nani, so who are you apart from being married to one? Who is Joyce?
So Joyce is, as I said, I am a mother. I am a wife, a daughter, a sister. I'm also a Kenyan citizen by birth. But more importantly, and I guess speaking to the conversation today, is that I'm actually an environmental scientist, a graduate of Kenyatta University many years ago. Irrelevant for this discussion, but also a student at Strathmore Business School
At the moment.
at the moment, currently finalizing my master's in public policy management.
Cheering you on.
Yeah, cheering you on. Thank you. And of course, beyond that, I do love to spearhead different initiatives. I'm also a member of the Rotary Club of Lavington, ECO, the first environmental club in Africa under the Rotary. And I'm a founding member of that club. Beyond that, also, of course, I do love to mentor women. I'm also a committed Christian. I do love Jesus. Foundationally, he is my everything. Beyond that is that I do love matters sustainability, matters environment. I do love to cook and I do love to play golf.
You are an all-rounded personality. I'm telling you, and I think also having interacted with you for a while now, and I think I've mentioned this before, that if resilience and evolution was a person, that would be you. So I think one question right now, how do you do it? How do you become all that in one person, particularly a woman?
That's so funny, Josephine. So I would not attribute it to my abilities. I would say it comes from understanding purpose, understanding that I am on this earth for a specific reason, understanding that there are seasons that come, there are different seasons in life, and I treat all my assignments like an assignment. So whether it is being the CEO at PAKPRO, whether it is being a wife, being a mother, being a friend, it's very intentional for me. I do not believe in coincidence. And so I live my life with that clarity. I wasn't born like that. It is
Is that
something,
so?
no, contrary to popular belief. No, it's something that I've had to really, seek God on to get a better understanding of my why. I'm still on the journey. It's not that I know the answer to it, but I live and pray my life out that everything that I'm doing, including sitting on this podcast today,
Nice.
that it is to create an impact, to be able to shift a mindset, and to be able to showcase the best of what needs to be done wherever it needs to be done.
You have officially sanctified and dedicated this podcast. It shall be a success,
Oh, yes.
a major
Oh,
success.
yes,
Yes,
absolutely.
thank you very much. And I think now getting right into it, and thinking that PAKPRO actually didn't just happen to be PAKPRO. It has also, and you mentioned that you like to build things, and I believe this is one of those things that you have been building from all the way back when you were Petco, when we knew you only for PET bottles, also associated with Coca-Cola. Sometimes we never understood whether it was a Coca-Cola initiative or a Joyce initiative or how exactly it went on. Maybe you can shed light on that a bit.
So I always like to share this story that the government of Kenya banned plastic flat bags successfully. So 2017,
2017.
it was so successful that I think for some time, and maybe within industry, there might have been a feeling that it might not have happened, or it wasn't really going to happen, or it was just talk, but it did happen. And because it did, the government then looked around the environment, rightfully so, because it is their mandate, and identified plastic PET bottles, the bottles that pack our drinking water, our soda, our juices, and many other products, and said this packaging material is also a nuisance, just like the plastic bags. And the reality at the time, 2017, you would find these bottles all over the environment, be it the rivers. There were so many pictures always of floods coming in, and there was this huge pool of these bottles that had gathered somewhere. And so the government at the time said, you know what, this should be the next target packaging material to ban. And so that conversation started.
Where were you at that
To
moment?
be,
Because now I'm also trying to
yes,
bring in,
where am
how
I?
was Joyce involved in this conversation?
It's a very good question. So I was actually now firmly in consultancy. I've had a consultancy firm, that I think I started in 2013, that supports environmental compliance, regulatory support, including for some companies and entities like the telecommunications giants we have in Kenya. And so there's been a team I developed, and I was there. I had just left the energy sector. I was working for the government of Kenya, the Kenya Electricity Generating Company, supporting the development of their carbon credits project. And so I had done that for some time and exited into consultancy. And then I remember that there was a headhunter who said, I think you should have a look at this. And I said, really? Like, and with headhunters at first, they don't tell you who is recruiting. Then they were at pains to really
Shed more
define,
light
like,
and
what is this
what role are you
organization?
going to even be playing at
And
it?
what organization is this? So they were recruiting a country manager position. And I thought, okay, this looks interesting. It looked interesting because for me, at the start of my career, I started in consulting. I worked on a project, the Integrated Solid Waste Management Project,
Okay.
with JICA for Nairobi. That time there were no county governments. And we did so much good work. So I was very familiar with the waste ecosystem in Kenya. And so with that, surprisingly, I had also supported an environmental impact assessment for one of the large bottlers in Kenya for PET, for a PET line that they had put up. And so the headhunter thought, my goodness, it will be a perfect fit. She's still not able to explain what is going on. And, so I sent me your CV, please. And I did. And I was called to the interview. And at the time, of course, because Coca-Cola had put in the initial grant support.
Okay.
They were not alone. They were with 7 other companies, but they had offered their offices and everything to be able to
domicile
this initiative. And so that's where the interview happened. And so I went for an interview at Coca-Cola and I'm like, I still don't understand what's going on, but I'm here. And we had such a fantastic engagement. And of course, now I knew, what this entity would be doing. I had an example in South Africa to be able to kind of do a deep dive. And I was fascinated. I was so fascinated that this looked like such a high impact project.
Yeah.
I had not heard of anything like this in Kenya. So it actually meant that I was going to be the first person to implement it. So I was very fascinated. So when I got the job, I started 3 months later. And when we started, I remember when I got my contract, my KPI was 2 KPIs. Number 1, make sure PET bottles are not banned in Kenya.
Are not banned.
Yes, they should not be banned. The government of Kenya should not ban these bottles.
But the government wants to ban.
Yes.
Because of the success of the ban of the carrier bag.
Correct. And these bottles are a nuisance. So this is KPI number 1. KPI number 2, set up an organization to be able to implement these, deploy these initiatives, and we move on. So I was dealing with 2 heavy tasks on both sides. One from a regulatory standpoint, and then, of course, the other one now from an operational and systems approach. But that being said, I did have, and I've always had, a very strong and committed group of individuals as my board members.
But before we go there, now at this point, did you feel a sense of conflict? Where was your mind at? That now that we have seen the success of the PET carrier bag ban and success and the impact that it has had on our environment, and now you have a role here to ensure that it doesn't happen further when it comes to the PET bottles, particularly for packaging. Where was your mind at that
as an
particular point?
environmentalist?
Yes.
I scanned the globe through research to check, is there any market in the world that has banned PET bottles? None. Number 2, what is the alternative? Does it exist? No. Number 3, the why. Why are we using these bottles? Okay. Remember, and I use water. Before we even get to soft drinks, just water alone, we are a country that doesn't have access to clean drinking water. Most of us in our homes have either invested in water dispensers, others are boiling water, using different treatment options. But the bulk of the people are buying water, especially in urban settings. And so for me, I felt like this was a true case of demonstrating the nexus between planet and profit. and that you could actually achieve by creating a value chain that you're able to create jobs, recover these bottles, recycle them, but protect the environment. So
Actually,
I
think
believed in
it's,
that.
yeah, planet, profits, but also
Yes.
you brought in the issue of the
Yes.
people, so the three
Yes.
P's
I
apply.
really,
That
I really
makes
believed in it. And so I was now like, I'm a mad woman.
fired up.
I was like, this can work. I could see the model, I could see the business model, I could see the vision, I could see the impact. In my head, it was very clear that not only is this doable, but it is transformational. And so for me, that's actually what I set out to be able to achieve. And because of the support that I received, I was able to, together with our team, we were able to actually create systems, deploy capital from our members at the time, about 7, 8 companies, to be able
Not
to,
very
not
many, but
very
must
many,
have been very visionary as
very
well.
visionary, very intentional, because we also had a lot of grant support to be able to demonstrate that we can move capital from businesses, increase the value of these bottles. And for most people, it didn't make sense. It didn't make sense that we are taking money from here to increase the volume, the bottle price, because that's actually what we did. When we started this operation in 2018, a kilogram of bottles, PET, about 40 bottles, was going for 5 shillings. You
The
imagine?
collectibles.
Yes. You have spent so much time wherever you are, a dump site or otherwise. You recover your 40 plus bottles and you only get
Only
5
for
shillings.
5 shillings.
And so we would put in subsidy support so that you would bring these bottles and we started it at 10. So it would be 10 shillings. You get 10 shillings.
That double the price at that
Correct.
point.
Correct. We started seeing movement. When we started seeing movement, believe it or not, our recyclers started to increase their capacities.
And was the infrastructure also available and sufficient for the increased collection?
To be honest, the infrastructure for collection has never been sufficient.
Interesting.
What we had at the time was a group of recyclers that had an export market for the processed bottles. And because that demand was there, they didn't want to inject too much of their cash flow to get a better price. But now, when we started putting in this subsidy, the market started to shift. When it started to shift, recyclers started realizing we can actually mop up volume based on a pricing thing.
Yeah.
So they started also increasing their price.
It is human nature, I think, when incentives are introduced into the system. It's human nature for you to feel like ramped up, the way you're saying now you have a vision, but at the same time when there's an incentive. So it is interesting to see that also trickling down into business, and particularly in this initiative over something that perhaps was not entirely long-term visionary, because I don't think at that point we actually envisioned that Kenya would be at the point where we are in terms of recycling. We are still low, to be honest, but I think hearing that and seeing how even today you're pushing for incentivizing particularly the informal sector and the impact that it could potentially have on our system.
I think for us, we didn't have the full picture, but we knew enough from South Africa's example, because remember, for them in South Africa, they had deployed this for, I think at the time, about 14 years. And it had worked. It had worked so much so that they were now at the next level of recycling. They were converting into new products locally and using those products. And so for us, the opportunity was real. It was a question of, can we prove a business case that Kenya is a market that we can give you enough feedstock as a recycler, that you're able to set up a facility here and convert your product. And so for us, as now the organization PETCO at the time, it was to be able to create a catalytic environment. How do we link the value chain? How do we tell people that don't even know that there's a business opportunity around recovery of these bottles, to start recovering and take them to facility XYZ. What we ended up seeing is our recyclers ramped up their capacities for production, because now collection started happening, not just in the small pockets of places, but it started becoming more widespread. It stopped being a secret for a few. I keep saying it's that we made that we together with the other value chain actors, it became an open activity. It was no longer a secret activity for a few people.
It was more, I feel like it was then more like a secret gold mine.
Exactly.
That we have discovered there's wealth in waste collection. In this case, what others would see as waste, for them it was a resource that was
Correct.
going into production of other resources.
Correct.
And seeing that and comparing the collection rates that we have today as opposed to what you're saying, that must have been massive.
Yes. And I think for me, where I knew something has shifted is when at the time the resident country, I think director at the United Nations Environment Program, he came up to me and said, you know what? There's a change. We can see it in the natural environment that PET bottles, they are not all over the place.
And you're hitting KPI number 1.
That I said, wow, we're still receiving some backlash because, the threats are still going on. But there was movement, okay? Then our own regulator started appreciating that there's movement. It wasn't what they wanted at the place that they thought they would have reached, but they were seeing that there was movement. The waste value chain, especially the informal sector players, the ones who are actually working at our dump sites, a lot of our own private waste service providers began to report to the government that there's movement around this packaging material. There's movement happening. And so for me, I think that's where the needle started moving. And that then brought us back to the table. Because remember, the government, when we started this work, they gave us about 3 years to be able to proof of concept.
Case, yes.
Does this work or not in Kenya?
Before we
even start. Yeah. So after 3 years, when we were reviewing, they said, okay, there's some traction. What can happen next? And this is where KEPSA really was able to move now the baton to the next level, because together we were able now to get this into a legal framework that mandates all companies to be able to participate in an activity such as this. Because before, the government was relying on the facts and figures, and industry actually, of what we are saying, that as an organization, this is what we are doing. And only 8 companies were carrying the burden for everybody else.
Because I want to believe at this point, it was also in industry's interest, because they're also trying to protect themselves in terms of the production. And I have had stories of the impact in terms of industry that was had with the ban of the plastic. So creating that balance was in the industry's interest. And it was also in the government's interest to make sure that a regulation in this case would support both local production, bring in investments, like you have said in the case of South Africa, but at the same time, protect the environment. So finding yourself in this, in the middle of this pot that is cooking all this good news, what came out of it?
One, I discovered my abilities can be stretched. As you can imagine, I want to paint a picture of how uncertain the environment was. While, yes, all this good work was happening in the background, we still were not sure whether the ban or the conversations around banning this packaging material had been dealt with. And so, as you rightly said, it was necessary to be able to create a predictable investment environment, which meant we really needed government regulation to come into play. And so that back and forth of trying to craft a document to be able to cement an investment climate where an investor who wants, and I mean, we talk about, and I take PET again, a facility like a recycling plant to convert used PET bottles into resin for new bottles, about $20 million investment. That kind of investment requires some support.
Yeah,
It has to be
regulatory
predictable,
support,
because by
yes.
the time I realize my return on investment, I cannot be doing it in an environment that is unpredictable. And so we built a case for that. But again, it also is one of the most interesting pieces of legislation
Why so?
because we did it together with government.
Hand
So
in
we did
hand.
it hand in hand, very open, very
Is
open.
that opposed to what you had seen in history where it was always government against private sector against, like not really working in tandem, but it is more of a push and pull. And now for maybe the first time or in a very unique case, you're seeing now, let's actually come together and contribute from both sides.
I think especially coming against the backdrop of the plastic bags being banned, the taste in industry's mouth was that government already had a very fixed position around this. And so to have government say, no, let's co-create this thing together. From your information around this subject matter, because everyone appreciated we have a crisis in the waste management sector in this country. And so first we needed to craft something that fixes waste management
In
general before we even start getting granular
Yeah.
to where the private sector is being held responsible for their own packaging. And so this is actually the genesis of the Sustainable Waste Management Act of 2022. And it's a first in many parts of the world. Most people have waste management legislation as part of a larger environment regulatory framework. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so in this case now, it was under the Sustainable Waste Management Act of 2022, where the extended producer responsibility regulation is pegged. And for those who still are not familiar, and at this point, I think we have made quite a lot of noise, you particularly, and the other players in across the sector around EPR. But I still understand that there are quite some percentage of businesses, leave alone citizens. Let's talk about the businesses who are directly affected, because this brings in the polluter pays principle.
Correct.
Where you're the producer of a certain packaging, and so you have to take responsibility of it up to the very end of their life cycle. So maybe I am putting too much English into it, and you may be able to break it down for the for everyone to understand.
I think in its most basic form, and this is really under Section 13 of the Act, the Sustainable Waste Management Act, that mandates companies to take care of their packaging or their products once you and I as consumers are done with them. So if I were to take a step back, a typical business or producer of any product, when they are doing their business plans, it's how do I get my product to Josephine as my consumer? Okay, so that is where usually the conversation
story
is.
ends.
That I've gotten her my drinking water. She likes my water. I need to keep her buying that water. That is usually the conversation. What this act and this section in that act is prescribing is that me as a business, I now need to find out, once Josephine is done with that water, what is she doing with that
the
bottle? Where does it go? And this is really at the heart of driving responsible consumption. When we look at the Sustainable Development Goals, which we are a signatory to as a country and many businesses individually, SDG number 12 really talks about responsible consumption and production, because today we do have a plastic pollution crisis. And unfortunately, especially for economies that are emerging, where the birth rates are also growing exponentially, you find that consumption is also going up.
Growing.
And one of the easiest ways to scale your product is really by having packaging that allows me to move it from place A to B easily with a lower footprint. And so that has been
please
it.
forgive my mind. It works in because I want to connect all the dots, and I don't want to we proceed and then I forget to ask. At this point, you have made an admission that we clearly do have a plastic pollution problem.
Yes.
But you're also in a position where you're trying to ensure that issues like a ban are not happening. So the idea is to create a system that will make sure that although the production continues, it does not affect the environment, or it does not contribute to the pollution problem.
Correct.
So I just want to make sure that that is still correct,
Yes.
because I know there is still a debate going on about the only solution that we have actually is to eliminate, and we will come to that because it's still part of the solution, but for what is completely unnecessary and problematic. So looking also at, we are producing, but we have to admit we have a problem. And when there's a problem, we need to look at what is the problematic aspect of this product, of this packaging.
Correct. And so, as you've put it rightly so, if we were just to look at, is PET plastic problematic? No, it can be recycled numerous times. In fact, it can be recycled back into its original use. And so because of that, why do we need to keep spending forex money? Remember, Kenya, we are not an importing, we are not an oil generating country. And I put that out there with caveat, because I know there's oil in Turkana and other places, but we are not refining and producing it here. And so because of that, plastics are a byproduct of the refinery process of petroleum, of crude oil. And because of that, as a country, we are always spending so much money in terms of forex, importing resin to make plastic, because plastic is essential. It preserves our food. It allows us to pack our products and keep their shelf life longer. And so there are many benefits I can give around it.
So umesema plastic sio shida.
Plastic,
Shida ni the way
we are the problem. And I do not dispute there are some problematic plastics. Number one. Number two, I also do not dispute that many brands are putting in unnecessary plastics in their packaging. Sometimes you can unwrap a product and you find it has like 4 or 5 layers.
Other layers of plastic
and it's like, is it necessary? And so beyond that conversation, when we get to the heart of, are plastics necessary and integral? They are. What is problematic, what we do not need to keep using as virgin material, meaning as fresh material, then please, by all means, let us drive recycling. I know there's a whole school of thought around recycling being, oh my goodness, greenwashing. What are we talking about? I myself have been accused of being a proponent of greenwashing, And unfortunately, I keep saying it comes from a lack of understanding of one, what we are doing. Number two, I am an environmental scientist, which means my allegiance to protecting the environment is really integral to myself in my profession and in my career. But I also believe a lot of the solutions that we are going to create in this world do have to have an enterprise thought approach to it, which means what is the value to doing activity A, B, C, which then creates a more sustainable solution. And so for me, this is why I feel recycling as an activity does offer significant promise. For PET alone, we do have a demonstrated case in Kenya
Okay.
that we can show you that recycling has been able to create jobs, put money in people's pockets, to be able to build an entire industry around it. So much so that we firmly believe in our sector.
How
We
much
can
are we
create a
talking
hub.
about?
For how many bottles, how many
Yeah,
PET, how much PET?
how much we recycle. I don't know how you're able to break it down,
Yeah.
whether it's in tons per day or per month or
Yes.
per year. And also, how has that translated into job creation? I know we are talking about now green jobs, sustainable jobs, and
Correct.
I know that is part of the conversation. Are you able to break that
Yes,
down in
yes.
numbers?
So I can. As an economy, I think, and maybe I can even use 2024 as a base year. We did about nearly 40,000 metric tons recycled, which is a significant. We started
amount,
at
yes.
near 5,000.
And this has been eliminated from the
Yes,
environment. Yeah.
means it has been converted, and it has been paid for. If we look at paying last year, 50 shillings per kilogram, that is 36 million kilos times 50. That is how much was injected into the economy, into people's pockets. And when I say people, I'm talking about the collectors.
Nice.
Okay? So when you look at that, you realize that the multiplier effect of being able to consolidate this as an industry, there's a business case around it. If we were able, and I don't like to talk about formalization of the informal sector because the reality is the world is moving into a gig economy. And so I'm more interested in creating structures, systems
That will bring resources
correct
to the ground.
yes being able to make this segment of collectors bankable, being able to transfer build capacity to transfer knowledge and skills around how do they run their businesses, how do they improve their health and safety, improve their work environments. These are the things I'm more interested in. Someone might say, but Joyce, isn't that making it formal? It might be, okay, but I'm not asking them to register XYZ, do ABC, become
So
unionized.
doesn't that process of registration, I don't know whether that is what translates to formalization, like you say, doesn't that make it easier for you now to bring in the resources, whether it is monetary or technical down
To be honest, it does. But you also need to look at it from the context of from where I sit and from where government sits and from where you sit as a consumer and the environment is we don't want this packaging material lying around in the natural environment. Now, does limiting it to being collected by Josephine, who is in a portal XYZ, really achieve that? Does it matter? No. Does it achieve the goal? No. I realize the benefit of it. But around the conversation of formalization, I think it's a more it's a conversation that requires multiple stakeholders,
Okay.
including those we are talking about, to be at the table to look at what is the best way to do this. Because the reality is the informal sector is one of the fastest growing. It's actually where the heart of our economy lies. And we want to allow as many people as possible to plug in without as many restrictions to being able to join a particular trade. And I think that's one of the things that we love about the waste management sector. Actually, as I'm seated here, you might find there's somebody who has joined that business right now while I'm seated here. Yeah. And it's like, oh my goodness, this is an opportunity. Can I go start? And we have so many examples like that. And we love that because it says to us that we are allowing people to tap into a trade that the reason they have not tapped into it is they didn't know about it.
Lack of knowledge. Yeah. So now we have, with this regulation, we have EPR, and we have broken down it for people to understand. We are still at PETCO, but now there's a regulatory framework that now also forces you as an organization to evolve. And that is how PAKPRO is born. And then you can maybe just, briefly give us that transition, how it happened. And then also diving into I remember during that process, it was quite intensive with the engagements as well with the private sector. I think this was another demonstration of that partnership between the public and the private, the government and the business industry. And then we are almost at the end where we have a regulation that is in place only for things to happen. Please tell us what are those things that have
Wow.
happened.
So I think for us in 2022, and because I also had the privilege of sitting on the, the task force, the technical committee that put together the Sustainable Waste Management Act, I knew for a fact that government did not want to have many small PROs, organizations like ourselves, handling one material, because it becomes very hard for them to regulate.
So in this case, the PRO is
Yes.
the Producer Responsibility Organization that would
support companies
Yeah.
to be able to manage a specific packaging material.
Okay.
So because I could see that was the way the regulation and the law was being crafted and had been crafted. Remember, I was part of it. So from an advisory perspective, of course, you do advise the board that, you know what, this cannot be. But beyond that, we now, because of the success we had in PET, we started getting interest from other companies that are not in PET. They're using other materials. And I think for us, the first one was the liquid board packaging. Commonly, many people think of Onboni Tetra Pak when we talk about it. But we received interest from them. We also received interest from other people who are doing flexible packaging.
So Joyce
Now
sees another
we see
business
now
opportunity.
here is an opportunity. Why should we let it go? And so the board quickly approved that we can accommodate other packaging materials. So now we move from being a one packaging material PRO to being a multi packaging material PRO. And so that's where we shifted. That's where we transitioned and pivoted. So in 2023, we did a rebrand. We moved from PETCO to PAKPRO. And so once we did that, we were able now to, all our members now who were coming to join us, who were doing other material would be more comfortable and more settled.
Yes.
Beyond that,
Because also that means you had members previously who had multiple packaging products that now they had only one taken care of and others that were not.
Actually, we were only doing PET. And even our members who had PET, there's nobody who puts a PET bottle in the market without a flexible packaging, without a carton box. So we were not handling any of that. So now even for them, they felt like, oh my goodness, all our interests now can be catered for in this one organization. And so it was exciting. I think our rebrand and our change of accommodating new packaging materials, it was welcomed by our members, and we started seeing a growth in our membership. That being said, of course, we knew that we are still operating in a quasi-mandatory environment, meaning we did not have a regulatory framework that actually explicitly told companies what they needed to do.
Yes.
And that was a big problem because here we are. Doing our vision planning, our strategy.
But I still can join you if I
Anyone
want,
can, or I can join you, pay my membership fee, and I don't pay my fees for the packaging. So now we were like, this is a danger and a red flag. So now we go back to government. The regulation, we need the regulation for extended producer responsibility. And they're like, yeah, it's captured in the document, the Sustainable Waste Management Act. In fact, it said within 2 years, the cabinet secretary should have gazetted an extended producer responsibility regulation. So we kept pushing back and forth. Sometimes, and just when you're in this process, today we are high, we are like tomorrow it's coming out tomorrow. Then
it's like drum rolls,
oh my Lord,
and
it's quiet. And so we had this back and forth with government. And I think, to be honest, because as an organization, we have we do a lot of advocacy, a lot of engagement with the Ministry of Environment, with NEMA, at the cabinet secretary level, principal secretary, the director general of NEMA, every cabinet secretary, from the one who just came in, I think in 2023, we went immediately and said, please, can we get this going? And I think she said, yes, we can get it done. We are committed to getting it done, but it didn't happen immediately. And then, of course, in 2024, Aiden Dwale, who was then our cabinet secretary in the Ministry of Environment, he did go ahead and gazette the extended producer responsibility regulations.
This was such
Unfortunately,
an anticipated moment,
Yes.
even globally,
Oh,
because I remember
yes.
even in our conversations at the Plastics Pact network level, and especially because in Africa, again, only South Africa has an APR in place, and Kenya would become the second one. And then there was the success rate of the previous ban. And so I think we are actually known globally for pretty exciting regulations.
Yeah, to be honest, we fit the bill. To
We
be the
fit the
host
bill.
of UNEP, we fit the bill. We check all the boxes,
Yeah.
and not just to market ourselves, but we check all the boxes. I think from a government perspective, the commitment is there. You really have to give it to them. Many of my compatriots in other African markets, they'll tell you we have a regulation, but you'll find it's even a regulation, not in the Ministry of Environment, in some other, and just not structured and well organized. So I really give it to government in terms of trying to create this environment. I think where the challenge came in, of course, with the extended producer responsibility, and I know I can't talk a lot about it because it's an ongoing court process, is that there were some changes that were different from what we thought was going to come out in that document. And so then now there's a whole court process around it, which has kind of put a halt to
On the
EPR and the momentum in EPR, which really has been a little bit unfortunate. And I don't say a little bit, it's actually been unfortunate because I can tell you, maybe even from our own organization as PAKPRO, we really had built 2025 was going to be the dream year, where you see all the fruits of your labor.
of the many years.
Yeah, because now, one, ESG is also, coming really into effect.
Yes.
And so we had seen this opportunity of being able to build a nexus
together.
that now, from a circular economy, data metrics, information, there would be so much value we are able to offer our members from an ESG reporting perspective, because they did need to deal with this component. We would deal with it for them 100%. We have been doing it, we know it, we can do it. And we were really excited. Surprisingly, this excitement was on both sides, between government and ourselves. Like, we are between our regulator, we have a very good relationship with our regulator. Was like 2025 is the
year of the
takeoff
Lord.
year. The takeoff year. We'll have other African countries coming to our markets, to benchmark and see how did you
But
do.
imagine
They
they
still
are.
do.
They
They
still
still
are.
do.
I think
And
there's hope. And it's not lost.
It's
I would want to call it as a setback.
Yeah, it's a setback.
little learning
It's a
experience.
setback. I guess it's that thing where your grandmother says, don't count all your chickens before they've hatched. Because we really did. To be honest, we did. As you say rightly, so it's not lost. We are still in it. We're still very committed. I know my members are fully committed to
And when you
EPR.
talk about your members, what has been the intake so far? Given that at this point, what we are actually talking about is the regulation coming into actual effect, is making it mandatory for everybody to be part of a PRO and to comply with the EPR. So up until now, this initiative has been voluntary. And we have also seen that uptake. So how would you say, because I think it was from a point of knowing that it's coming, kind of pushed businesses to take action. However, without the regulation, will we see a sit back, or has this become now part of a culture where businesses are understanding the importance of having a strategy in place where they are taking responsibility for what they put out? Or do you see it as it will continue even if we have a setback, we have seen commitment from industry? Or are you afraid, honestly speaking, that this might mean otherwise?
To be honest, Josephine,
See your side.
I feel that, and this is, I think, in every economy, you do have a coalition of the willing, those who will do something regardless. And then you have the group that will only move when it is mandated. Unfortunately, the latter are the majority. So many businesses are okay to have the coalition of the willing carrying their burden for them. And this is what I feel that will be disproportionate, because you'll still have the bigger brands, the ones that are more well known, more established, more structured, those who have embedded sustainability into their businesses,
Taking the
carrying the burden for the majority without a regulation being in place. And so for me, the risk that I see, and why we need to have this court process, get to its logical conclusion, is to be able to have this anchored as part of our regulatory framework. Because remember, I told you as PETCO, we had 7-8 companies carrying the burden for many. It will be really unfortunate to have
go back to
this
the
situation being replicated, because it's unfair for me to cost this in my business. We are putting the same product in the market and yours doesn't have this factored into it. It's just simply not fair. Yet, remember, as a PRO, as an organization, when we activate the value chain to collect this packaging, we tell them to collect the material. We don't tell them to collect the brands. So we will tell them, collect PET bottles, collect.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter whether it is Josephine's brand or Joyce's brand.
Yeah.
And so it becomes very unfair that I'm collecting Josephine's brand,
And
but
taking-
Josephine is not paying anything for that activity. And so for me, this is the big risk I see, and why we do need a structured way forward around this matter, so that we are able to really unlock the opportunities. Remember, this is not just a Kenyan issue. This is happening around the globe. EPR is not being implemented only in Africa. Europe is at it. The US now is at it. Asia is in this. And so because of that, you find that as nations are coalescing around this issue, and it's unfortunate what happened to the Global Plastics Treaty.
I think it's the replica of what you're saying. There's a small group of the willing.
Correct.
And then there are those, unfortunately, also with quite some influencing voice that would come and say we actually going
taking
for
a
the
step,
very
exactly.
opposite.
And so we need now to be able, as a nation, to understand that this is integral, not only to protect the environment, but that we can actually create an entire sector that is producing and creating value for our economy and for the region if we position ourselves well. Because there's nothing that limits Kenya from being a regional recycling hub. Absolutely nothing. We have everything it takes
To
and
be that
exactly,
and more.
Exactly. But to be able to catalyze that, we do need a predictable environment. And this can only be done with having the regulations
And I
in place.
think that predictability needs to apply beyond the environmental regulations for it to be an inclusive economic growth.
Correct.
And I think, Joyce, you and I can keep at it
Forever.
forever, which is a good thing. But I'm just wondering now, what would be your ideal outcome out of this? Looking, we have only what now? This is the counting down to the end of the year. I think walking around, I've already started seeing Christmas trees and lights.
Imagine.
So I started humming that song, starting to look a lot like Christmas. But it's also a signal that actually the year is coming to an end. The year that was meant to be is coming to an end. And so it may not be this year, maybe next year, maybe the other year, hopefully sooner than we actually think. That's our prayer. But what would be the ideal outcome for both the planet, the profits, in this case, looking at industry, the people as well, because of, I think we have seen with the conversation of AGOA, and sometimes we think too big of agreements and treaties and regulations, and sometimes we forget what they actually mean on the ground.
Correct.
The jobs that they support, you know. So how, what's the picture for you?
To be honest, and I'm so happy you've brought in, AGOA, because it helps us go back to the drawing board to internalize the fact that development is actually a responsibility of a country. And while we have harnessed so many benefits from AGOA, if I were to juxtapose that to, the extended producer responsibility, the fall through in the Global Plastics Treaty should not limit us from being able to realize the potential of developing the recycling, reuse sector in Kenya. The opportunity around the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement is exponential. A lot of our own countries in Africa are actually importing resin from other OPEC countries, okay? And this is value we are transferring to other economies, okay? We have so many used cars, motorbikes that are lying around, computers, phones. All this is value that we are not tapping into. Today, if you go to China, go to Japan, and you look at their recycling recovery industries, it's not because it's just a nice thing to do. It's that the economic sense in doing it is so exponential.
You cannot ignore
You cannot ignore it. And we are crying we don't have jobs. Herein lies an opportunity where we are able to create good jobs if we structure them well as an industry, understand what are the fiscal incentives that can spur this investment by companies that want to come and set up these industries here, to be able to now begin to shift our thinking to not looking at this. Sometimes when you look at things like an environment issue, I feel
That's
like
how it ends up being a backbench topic.
Correct, unfortunately. And it should be a forefront issue because this is actually a trade and an economy issue. And we need to center the conversation in the right place. This is an opportunity for us. And if we are able to craft it properly, we have already 2 steps in. We have a good legal framework. So we just need to get the regulations right and we begin to build on that because we are going to keep building. Remember, when it comes to policy, it's not static. It will keep changing as we begin. But the foundational steps, our 1 foot is in the right door. Yes. We just need to make sure we are walking through that door wholly so that then we are able to carry even the region. The region stands to benefit exponentially by us getting this right.
Yeah, we recently hosted a delegation from Rwanda. The country is also considering EPR, and they don't have another big sister to benchmark on. Even it doesn't matter what we have gone through, they want actually to understand those steps so that the thing with learning is that sometimes you know what to do and sometimes you know what not to do. And all of it is part of benchmarking. Let's do this, Joyce. Let's have another session.
Please, let's. I love this. I can do this for 24 hours.
Because I think we have not even scratched the surface. But I'm looking at the time and this podcast might end up being the longest yet.
We'll ask for dinner.
So let's do this again. In the meantime, I think for your closing word, what would be your call to action? And allow me to laugh at you because every time I say this, I remember a friend of mine who likes saying, Joyce likes to say from where I sit.
Yes. From where I sit.
Even when she's standing.
Yes. From where
I sit. So from where you sit, luckily we are seated. What is your call to action to all the stakeholders, industry, private sector, civil society, the government, and when I mention industry, is including the investors. You know, maybe some were ready to set up, in the country, and now they are, you know,
Shying away.
yes. What is your call to action as we close?
I think from where I sit, I believe that we'll get it right. I'm actually very confident of that. Will we have some teething problems? Absolutely. Nothing good doesn't. But I do believe that between industry players, private sector, waste value chain actors, the commitment is there to be able to create an ecosystem that we're able to harness this value. My call to action between both the government and ourselves as private sector and other value chain actors, including civil society, it is let us build a collective that is able to make this a reality. No one entity can do this on their own. I guarantee you. With all the money the private sector has, we need government. With all our combined efforts between government and ourselves, civil society, our waste value chain actors are required to make this a reality. And so let's build a collective. Let's keep working together, speaking to each other, hearing each other, open dialogue. And that's just honest, looking at what is good for Kenya. That's the most important thing. What is good for Kenya, at the very heart of it, is going to be good for the region and the continent.
I agree with you, and I do not want to add anything, but I think next time we want to bring also the citizen, because when you strip Joyce of PAKPRO, myself of whatever the title, we also have a responsibility to play. Na wengine wetu tuko na tabia mbaya
Very bad
that needs to be called out kabisa. So I am also hopeful that EPR is going to actually come into effect. We need EPR, and I think that is a great call to action, but that does also not strip us of our responsibility, whether it's business or government or citizens. That has to continue. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. Let's do it again
Please,
very soon.
please.
Until then, ciao.
Ciao.